Hello, my name is Alan Lewis, and for many years I've been doing the seminars with Dennis and Sysis, teaching bowling green courses and giving people advice on many sports surfaces. In this video, we're going to look at renovation of bowling greens. I know it's been a difficult year and we haven't bowled as often as we'd like to, but the green has still continued to grow, and the grass plant has produced thatch, organic matter, and these all need to be dealt with as part of the renovation. Before we talk about the renovation process, what I'd first like you to do is have a look at a video of a profile being taken from the green. You'll see in this video a profiler is being used. Don't worry if you haven't got one of these. There's nothing wrong with using a spade or a trowel if you're careful, or even a bulb planter. But you need to have a look at the green profile. This will help you assess what to do with the renovation. Finances are tight, time is tight, so have a look and only do what the profile tells you. What we're looking for in the profile is things like root depth, if there is layers of organic matter, whether the soil is particularly dry and suffering from a condition called dry patch. But have a look, take the guesswork out of it. It's important you measure these things because, for instance, when you scarify a green, you only need to scarify down to the depth of the thatch. If you scarify deeper, this means you'll bring up soil and cover the thatch you don't remove, which is not something you want to do because getting rid of buried thatch is very difficult. In the second video, we're going to show you a process where we're measuring the compaction of a green. You'll see a machine being used called a penetrometer. Again, not every green is going to have a penetrometer. Nothing wrong with you using something like a tent spike, even a fork, and try and feel if there's any resistance when you push it into the green. If the green will support your weight, then you'll know it's very compacted. If it will push it in easily, then there's no compaction problem. Knowing this will also be able for you to judge the type of aeration equipment you're going to use for the renovation and for future aeration through the autumn and winter. Okay. Green renovation follows some very basic steps, which is scarification, aeration, overseed, fertilize, and top dress. These are the standard operations, but your profile will tell you to what degree you do these. So before we start, mow your green. Mow it at match height, perhaps even mow it twice. That's because when we scarify in the autumn, we don't want to scarify the grass plant, we want to scarify the surface of the green. So if we get rid of the vegetation off the top, the scarifier will be more efficient. A standard scarifier goes in around about 5 to 6 mil. Okay, if you've got a much thicker layer of thatch, you need to think about using a more powerful machine. We're going to show you a video now of the different types of machines and methods that Dennis and Sysis can show you for scarification. As I've said, only scarify to the depth of the thatch. Remove the thatch, and that will be the first process done. A couple of little points on scarification. Try not to scarify at right angles. If you scarify at right angles, you'll create squares. And we know that squares can come out of the green much easier. Try and scarify at a 30-degree angle. That will create a diamond and will hold in much better. The other point, if you do use some of these more powerful machines with tungsten tip blades, they are very, very powerful and can cut into the green. Don't overuse them because you will make the surface of the green like a jelly and you'll lose the structure of the green. I would recommend with the powerful machines no more than 2 directions. Also remember, you cannot deal with a thatch problem completely in 1 year. I would suggest if you've got a bad thatch problem, you need to be looking at tackling it over a 3-year period. It's not just the physical removal of thatch, organic matter, but it's also getting oxygen into the green, which will encourage the bugs in your green to break down the organic matter. Okay, so the first process is done. We've scarified, we've removed the rubbish. Don't be surprised the amount of rubbish you take off a green. Next is aeration. Your profile and your compaction test will prove whether you need to think about something bigger or whether you can just use a standard solid tine. Whatever it is, it's important that you aerate. That gets air into the soil, gets rid of any pans, improves root breaks, things like this. There are two main types of spiker. There's a drum type spiker. Nothing wrong with a drum type spiker, but if you need to go a little bit deeper, you need to think about a cam action spiker. We're going to show you again a video now of the different types of aeration equipment available. Please remember that just doing an aeration when you renovate is not enough, and aeration should continue after the seed germinates through the autumn and winter. Some people ask about holotining. The old saying was that you holotined every 3rd year. Nowadays, with the modern scarifiers, these will actually remove more organic matter than a holotine will ever do. If you have a problem with your soil, you still may need to holotine. But I would suggest 80 to 90% of the problems are dealt with scarification. If you do holotine, please remember you'll have to apply a little bit more top dressing to fill the holes in. Particularly on a flat green, you mustn't leave the holes open because they will sink and you will lose the levels. But holotining is not a common operation which is done nowadays. So we've scarified, we've aerated. The next thing is to oversow. Most important thing about oversowing is to get good soil seed contact. Now you've scarified, you've spiked, that will create some, but additional soil seed contact will come by using a sow roller. Denison sizes have a number of ways to sow roll a green. There are cassettes for the F10, there are cassettes for the scarifying units, and there is some hand equipment as well. We'll show you a video now of the different ways of sow rolling. When you fill the green with holes, you can apply your seed. You can also drill your seeds, which is a better method, but again, not all greens can do this. When you have put your seed on, brush the green. That will brush some of the seed into the holes and improve soil seed contact. That will help germination and give you a better take. Now, the question of seed. 20 years ago, if I were to suggest perennial ryegrass on a bowling green, most people would think I was mad. But now perennial ryegrass is much finer and has great wear tolerance, particularly on flat greens for rink ends and things like this. So if you are having a wear problem, consider perhaps 30% perennial ryegrass. But if you use it, make sure you can do plenty of verticutting through the season, because perennial ryegrass has a tendency to crown, and those crowns can affect the run of a wood. Have a look at what your green is growing. The standard mix is fescues and bents, agrostis. My argument is, if your green isn't growing both of those greens, seeds, why are you putting it on? As a simple guide, most inland greens on an organic soil will grow bent very readily. A drier, sandy green, perhaps on the coast, will grow fescue. So have a look, see what you're growing, and I'm sure your local seed supplier would advise you. If you want to be certain, go for a fescue bent mix, and that will cover all options. But it's important you brush the green after you've sown to get some of the seed down the holes. Now, While you've got the green full of holes, full of those lovely aeration holes, it's a time to fertilise. Fertiliser is expensive, so ideally please have a soil test done. Your local supplier will do this, or some independent consultants do it as well. Now, basically, autumn and winter feed contains more phosphate and potash, because phosphate and potash is necessary for root growth and to protect the grass through the winter. So while you've got the green full of holes, fertilise. You may want to use a liquid. The trouble with a liquid feed is it won't last, and you don't want to be going on the green regularly when it's wet in the winter. So I would strongly recommend you think about a granular or a slow release feed. Finally, top dressing. Now, because we haven't been able to bowl much this year, you may not have the wear on rink ends on a flat green or corners, things like that on a crown green. Now, the two reasons you apply top dressing are quite simple. One is to cover the seed you've applied to aid germination. And the second method is to improve levels. So if you haven't had the wear, I would suggest to you don't need to apply the normal amounts of top dressing this year. Think about 50% of what you normally apply. But the most important thing is you need to work it into the green surface. When you've top dressed a bowling green, it shouldn't be brown. It should still be green because you've worked it into the grass. On a crown green, because we like our humps and bumps and hollows, it's not so important, and you can use a brush or a drag mat because they will follow the green. Now, on a flat green where it needs to be flat, it's very important that you work your top dressing in with a straight edge, ideally a lute. We'll now show you a video of a lute being used on a green. After you've luted the green, you can still brush it just to work it in that little bit more. But remember, it's not a bowling brown, it's a bowling green. So when you've top dressed, make sure you work it in. So we've scarified, we've aerated, we've oversown, fertilized and top dressed. Now, please don't get into the habit. Well, the old saying is we've renovated, so we've put the green to bed. Renovation and winter work are combined, and you will not relieve compaction on a bowling green with one aeration. So when the seed has germinated and you've given it a couple of cuts, and remember the first cuts need to be a little bit higher, so lift the mower and just take the top off, give it its first cuts. But after the seed has germinated and you've cut it a couple of times, you're into the winter program of aeration. Try and aerate with solid tines at approximately once a month. Don't go on the green now if the spiker is going to make a mark other than the holes, because those marks will stay there and they will affect the run of the wood. Again though, spike when you can, and when you do your spike towards the middle to end of December, again plan your next feed. That will make sure the plant has all the things it needs to see it through the worst part of the winter. Keep an eye open for disease. If your green is prone to disease, particularly fusarium, you may need to apply a preventative fungicide. But again, get professional advice on that. So, to summarize, even though we haven't played much, we still need to renovate. We perhaps use the same operations, but to different degrees depending upon the profile of the green. And perhaps we can reduce the amount of top dressing. Remember, the purpose of the top dressing is to repair levels and to cover the seed. And if you haven't had the wear, you won't have the poor levels. I hope that's of help to you, but the most important thing is that you have a look at the profile and assess the green and use the appropriate equipment. Always remember your dentist and situs representative will help you in any way they can. Hope that's been of help, and I hope you have a successful renovation. Goodbye.